Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, you've heard me say before, these are all companies I used as an athletic director. They're all great companies. I highly recommend that you check them out. So, listen to our commercial shout outs. It's only going to take 3 minutes. Then listen to our interview and then go and visit these sponsors, particularly ones you're not using. I'm telling you, you're going to be very glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Snap Raise for their support. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are gone forever. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with great success. Our coaches loved it, our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. Go to snapraise.com. We'd like to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges, and whether it's more support, more security, or more customization, the Hometown team is here to help you make the best online ticketing solution. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We'd like to thank Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. It's probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We want to say thank you to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's at Ohio University, but my assistant athletic director did, along with hundreds of others, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're earning your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters. We want to thank our good friends at Huddle. You've heard me say before, as a football coach, I used Huddle for years. As an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. And our coaches, all of our coaches, just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming, but there is so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and find out how to turn your school into a Huddle school. We want to say thank you to Home Campus. Now, Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, rosters, results. Their student athlete eligibility and clearance platform alone is worth the price. To get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. We'd like to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards for all the teams, for all the different events, or to show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touchscreen video consoles. They're also a great way to tell your school's unique history and brag a little bit about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Gipper. You know, your student athletes are on social media, and if they're not seeing content that celebrates their accomplishments or promotes your program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. Whether it's a social media post celebrating a victory or a newsletter that shows all the great things your program's doing, the Gipper staff is going to have you creating world-class content in seconds. Gipper's used and trusted by over 20,000 high school and college programs across the country. It's professional graphic design made easy. Go to Gipper.com to get started. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that just wants to complain. Athletic Surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% that supports your program. And having that data is incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with a frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Welcome back, everybody, to another segment of the Educational AD Podcast. We're chatting with somebody I can call an old friend, a friend of the show. Jhoana Cayme-Mosely was one of our small school athletic director guests on our recent series, Small School AD. And I was so intrigued by her sharing, I asked her to come back and do a full interview with us. Jhoana is the athletic director. Oh, first of all, Jhoana is a certified athletic administrator, and she's the athletic director, also does quite a bit of coaching at Lakehill Preparatory School, and that's in Dallas, Texas. Has an incredible background in athletics. She's going to share that with us today. But Jhoana, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
Well, for our listeners, we're recording this on December 5th, so it's going to be pretty timely as you listen to it. Joanna, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up. Maybe take us up through your own high school and college days, and then we'll take a break. But what's the Jhoana Cayme-Mosely origin story?
Sure. I was actually born in the Philippines and moved to Texas when I was about 6 years old. And I grew up in a suburb south of Dallas in Lancaster, Texas. For those familiar with the place, I believe it's a UIL 4A or 5A school. So pretty big in size. I had two older brothers, kind of grew up a little bit of a tomboy. So I played with dolls, I played with Barbies and all that stuff, but I grew up shooting basketballs and knowing how to throw footballs and catch footballs. I was the only girl in the neighborhood who would play the pickup football games that we would with the kids. And we were definitely a family that we were outside all the time, all day in the summer. We were outside playing basketball. We had a hoop set up, a goal set up in our driveway, and we were outside till mom turned the lights on so that we could come in for dinner. So it was that situation. But I was the only girl and I was the youngest. And so my mother never wanted me to be in sports or athletics. So she didn't want me to get rough and tumbled up. She didn't want any of that. My brothers finally convinced her to let me play. And so I wasn't until fifth grade that I actually started to get into organized sports and basketball. Again, I was always with my brothers. So I only knew the boy sports. I knew baseball, I knew football, I knew basketball. And so I got into fifth grade, got into a local youth organization, played some basketball. And then that's kind of where it began. Through junior high, basketball was my first love. And I got into volleyball because there was nothing to do until basketball season and all my friends were playing volleyball. I got into track because I thought it was good conditioning for basketball season. So everything kind of centered around basketball, and I turned into a three-sport athlete. And in eighth grade, I'll have to give her a shout out because she was one of those pivotal people in my life and still is actually to this day. I had a coach, her name was Tia Glenn, and she was one of those coaches that I think all of us as athletes or athletic directors now can look back on and say we had at least one of those coaches that had such a huge impact on us. And she was the very first one. I don't know, 28 years later, she's still in my life. I actually just saw her a couple weeks ago. And so she was my volleyball and track coach in eighth grade, and she has now coached me through everything. She still comes to my games that I coach. And so she's kind of one of those people that has made a huge impact on my life, even though we met when I was 13 years old. So in high school, continued to play those three sports, ended up cutting down to one sport, only played volleyball by the time I was a senior. But I got involved. I just gravitated towards leadership roles. I was the class president my junior and senior year. I graduated in the top 5% of my class. So there were a lot of organizations that I stayed involved in outside of athletics. But I ended up playing volleyball in college. So it's kind of a long way and a different way than what kids take these days. Because I know club volleyball is kind of the way to go into college athletics now. But I did not start playing volleyball till I was in seventh grade. So, um, and again, I only played because my friends played, and there was nothing to do till basketball season. So, but I played volleyball in college. I started at University of Texas in Brownsville. And then I transferred and I went on to play at Texas A&M International. I believe it's a Division II school now. It was an NAIA school in the past, and we transitioned into a Division II school while I was there. And I stayed on and was one of the assistant coaches there after I finished playing because I had a change in major, change in career, all that stuff. I was very much on my way to law school. I was a pre-law track, political science major, and I started volunteering and coaching at a small, tiny private school there. I was coaching fourth grade girls basketball and just fell in love with it. And those, some of those girls that are on the team actually still talk to. I was at one of their weddings last year, matter of fact. And so I started coaching and volunteering my time while I was still in college and just decided that's where I wanted to be. I didn't want to be in a courtroom or I didn't want to be in any law offices. I just wanted to be in athletics for the rest of my career. And so that's kind of how it got me to where I'm at now.
Well, I just love to hear the stories, and so great that you're still connected. You mentioned, your coaches and your mentors. That is just so cool. Um, you mentioned that you ended up changing your major, kind of pre-law and all that. I want to go back to what you said about your mom. She didn't want you out there playing with the boys and skinning knees and trading elbows. She was probably pretty excited when you were on that pre-law track. What was her
Yeah.
reaction when you said, "Hey, I've fallen in love with coaching"?
She was not surprised. I was probably the most scared to tell her because my oldest brother, he's a police officer. And my middle brother, he's a doctor. And so it just kind of fell along the lines of, you have your police officer, you have your doctor, you have your lawyer child. And so my parents were probably the last ones actually that I told. And, bottom line was like she knew, I think deep down inside, she knew that is always where I gravitated towards, and that's always where I wanted to be. And what's been literally just kind of the most consistent thing in my life, other than family, was athletics.
Mhm.
And that's where I felt the most comfortable. And so she wasn't disappointed, like I was scared for no reason. And
Right.
so she still kind of has like that picturesque story of I have a son who's a doctor, I have a son that's a police officer, oh, my daughter's a teacher. So
Mhm.
we're very much in that like, civil service type
Right.
uh, profession. All three of us cover that. So
No, I'm sure she loves you very much.
yeah.
Um, because and I was the same way too. I wasn't, anti-coaching or teaching as an undergrad. I just knew I didn't want to work for a living, and sports was a way to put that off. But when I started coaching, literally what my senior year in college, I was the same way. Just got I drank the Kool-Aid. Can you think back to a moment? Maybe it was in one of those driveway basketball games, or maybe when you started in middle school playing sports, or maybe with one of those coaches that had such an impact on your life. Can you think about a moment? I'm a big moment guy. Can you think about a moment that at the time it really didn't seem to stick out, but now, looking back with all of your experience as a teacher, as a coach, as an AD, you can look at that moment and say, hey, that was significant for me. Anything come to
Oh,
mind?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Eighth grade coach, actually, Coach Glenn, who it's funny because in my contacts, she doesn't have a first name. Like her first name in my contacts is still just Coach. And eighth grade, I think maybe I was a freshman or sophomore, but she told me as far as like career path and everything else. I don't know why we even were talking about that, but she said, and it's similar to what your dad told you in one of your books when you wrote about something, and she said, find something that you would do for free. So you don't see it as going to work every day. And when I was reading a little bit from your book before, I think it was your dad who said something along the lines, something that you get paid for, or it was something like that. But she told me, she said, find something that you would do for free because then you won't see it as going to work every day. And that is absolutely what I do now. Like I would coach for free, like it's just been such a think athletics has just been such a blessing in my life. I've met my best friends through there. Like everything that it's brought into my life, it really has just been a blessing, and it is just something that I would do for free. So I go back to that every time. When you say moment, I knew exactly which moment it was and how much of a significant impact that had on anything and everything, as far as which path I decided to follow.
Oh wow, that's great. And guys, thank you for giving my dad a shout out. The line was, my brothers and I, we had to work for him growing up. He was a
Yep.
contractor, and I just hated every minute of it. I wanted to be out playing games, and I know I was griping about something as a smart aleck eighth grader, ninth grader, and he said, Jake, the secret to happiness is finding something that you love to do and
Yep.
convincing somebody else to pay
There it is.
you to
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
And he had that with his job. He loved it. And I found that with coaching and teaching, just
Yeah.
like you did. I remember the first year, I'm teaching 6 out of 7 periods. I'm coaching 4 sports. They had a 4 sport season. It was a junior high. And I'm going, I'm getting paid to do this. I can't
Yeah.
believe it. So
Yeah.
let's go and take a break. We're visiting today with Jhoana Cayme-Mosely. She's a CAA and the athletic director at Lakehill Prep School, and that's in Dallas, Texas. We're coming back with more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Snap Raise for their support of the podcast. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraiser and then been disappointed in the results? Well, those days are over. Go to snapraise.com. It's hands down the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it, our parents loved it because it works. Go to snapraise.com. You can check out their other great platforms, but if you're looking for a fundraiser, you just found it. Go to snapraise.com. We'd like to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges, and whether it's more support, more security, or more customization, the Hometown team is going to help you make the best online ticketing solution. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more.
And yeah, I'm actually glad to hear that Hometown is one of your sponsors because that's who we've used the past couple years, and they have been fantastic to work with. We stumbled upon them because TAPS uses them for a lot of their events, and so they have been fantastic to work with. And it's not just ticketing; we use them for season passes and other things like that. So they've been a great vendor for us.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. I'm always curious when you made the transition from, cash payments to ticketless. How did your families, your parents, how did they accept that?
At this point, I think like all other schools, we started going cashless because of COVID. And a lot of schools have just never gone back to it and never went back to cash. It is just so convenient because no one ever has cash on them. And they have the option of we can put up a QR code at the gate. And so there does not need to be a pre-purchase
Right.
necessary. They can come in and they can scan their QR code, and it's just as easy as if they were doing it on their phone or on their laptop earlier. And so it's been a really, really great move and super convenient. We've actually started, we've just kind of gone cashless in the concession stand area. We went cashless there and started using card readers and everything else. So
Right.
it's one of those few things that COVID brought about that have actually been a really, really good and useful change.
Right. No, no, you're absolutely right. I do have a question for you though, because you are at a private school. At my schools, and it seemed like all 3 schools we had this, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and then up in Tallahassee. We would have parents come up, sometimes visiting parents, but usually 2 or 3 of our own, and they would say, "All I got's $100 bill." And I had a second cash box that I would give our
Yeah.
ticket takers that had those 20s and the fives, and they could say, oh, we can make change.
Oh
So
yeah.
did you do that?
Yeah, we have now because we started hearing that.
Yeah.
We do a little bit of a hybrid now for those people who, they only have 100 or they don't, just I don't remember my login or I don't remember my password
Oh,
or this or that. And so, yeah, no, we get it covered. So we're using a little bit of a hybrid model now because we started hearing that a little bit more often.
I love it. Good for you. For our listeners, our guest today is Jhoana Cayme-Mosely. She's the director of athletics at Lakehill Preparatory School in Dallas. Uh, Jhoana, I'm familiar with your story, but I want you to share with our listeners. You kind of landed at Lake Hill right out of college. How did that all happen?
So I finished up with school and I was because I changed from my pre-law track, it was going to take me a lot longer to change my major. And so I went ahead and finished my degree. So my degree is actually in political science. And I decided to go the alternative certification teaching route in trying to, get into the teaching world. And I just kind of started looking at postings and I knew I wanted to get into coaching. I was also coaching club volleyball. And so I found Lake Hill just randomly and when interviewed, and I think the volleyball team I think they won one single game the year before. And the AD at the time, who's still a close friend of mine, actually, he said they've won a game. You would have to come in and change the entire culture, and it would be your program, and you could essentially build it any way you wanted to and build from scratch. And so that was appealing to me in that sense because a lot of the other places that I interviewed at, I was not going to be the head coach. I was going to be the JV or just the varsity assistant. And so it wasn't going to be my program, or it was a middle school program and not a varsity program. So I took the job at Lake Hill. I was not full time. I was substituting at Lake Hill, working on my alternative certification. I was coaching three sports. I was the varsity volleyball coach. I was the middle school girls basketball coach, and I was helping the middle school and varsity track teams as a coach as well. And so it's the three sports that I grew up playing. I ended up coaching, and I did that for a really, really, really long time. I did this for a couple of years until a full time position opened up at Lake Hill. And then I was teaching PE. So we're a K through 12 private school. So to this day, I still teach kindergarten PE. I had them this morning. That is one that I will not give up. I've given up all the other grades, but I will not give up kindergarten PE. And I think that's just a great thing about our school is the fact that I get to know these kids and these families when their kids are at 5 and they're in kindergarten, and I get to know them and coach them as they grow up through middle school athletics and then high school athletics. So that in itself is a blessing, as well as being able to be a part of these journeys for 13 years. For some of them, we call them lifers. And so we have a lot of those in every grade that I get to be part of that journey. So that's been really rewarding.
I Joanna and I are Facebook friends. She does a great job on social media, and you posted some pics of those little kids. That's where you and I we diverged from there. I missed the middle school ages. Just really loved working middle school PE, middle school health. The lower grades, I wasn't wired for that. So my hats off to you working with those ankle biters. Um, you are the athletic director, and you are still the head varsity volleyball coach at Lake Hill. And for a long time, you also coach basketball. In this segment, let's talk about the coaching end of it. How have you seen coaching grow, change, improve, or the coaching experience, if you will, in your time at Lake Hill Prep? Over that, I guess it's about 17 years, right?
Yeah, so I'm on year 18 now.
Hmm.
And, when I decided to make this career change, my brother also told me, and he's like, you got to be ready to move schools every about 4 or 5 years if you're going to go into education and if you're going to go into coaching, because the average tenure of coaches, that's not very long. And so you got to be ready to move around. And those were his exact words. And so I like to kind of throw it in his face that I'm on year 18. and still at the same school now. But like you said, Jake, I coached volleyball and basketball and track for a number of years. And I think the biggest thing that has kind of changed is the impact of club sports on school sports. I see that a little bit more often now that, I grew up a three-sport athlete, but you have so many kids that specialize now and may only be playing one sport in their school year because they're in club sports the rest of the time that they're not in school sports. And so that has I've noticed that trend. We have, at least I don't see it as often as the big schools, as the big UIL schools, because we're a small private school and we share a lot of athletes. Our football players are our basketball players, our basketball players are our baseball players, and we don't have that issue a lot of the times, but I do see that a lot more that kids are specializing, and I think they're specializing at too young of an age, but that's another soapbox. But I really do think that coaching is what it you have such a huge impact and the potential that you can have on kids these days, because I tell my players, when you're in season, you put about 200 to 300 hours into that sport in your season. And if you think about it as coaches, and I tell my coaches this, like, we spend more time with those kids than they do with their own parents sometimes. And so the type of impact that coaches can make on a kid's life is so profound in that way, because we get them for that season. However, the amount of time and the things that they take from that season, it's with them for the rest of their lives. And so I really kind of try to remember that. I also, now I have a daughter now, she's 10, and it is difficult sometimes, I gotta say, to bring her to games. And she was our mascot, like, she grew up in the gym. But for her to see these kids and the type of impact that that has on her is so great, in the sense that she gets to see these kids and know what you have to put in to be successful. So it's a lot. It's a lot in one nut, in such a K through 12 community. There's so much that we get from that with our high school athletes.
Boy, that sound you hear is all of our listeners applauding, everything that you just said. Um, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I think I probably know the answer, but I still want to hear it. Um, as someone who spent most of their career at private and independent schools, I know the clientele and very much enjoyed my time, had a great time as an athletic director in that environment. I also know that there can be, let's say, the occasional parent, and whether you want to say entitled or demanding or whatever. This is actually multi-layered. As an athletic director, and we're going to get into your AD experience later, but I guess, okay, as a coach,
Yeah.
how do you navigate? I'm trying to say this neutrally. Um, all the things that you just said, the importance of the high school experience, playing on multiple teams, that sort of thing, with and some coaches, some parents are just dead set in their ways. Well, my kid has to play, let's pick a sport that we haven't talked about yet. Soccer. They got to play it year round. Not going to play for your high school team, or we'd love to play for your high school team, but we've got club. How do you communicate all those positive aspects of the high school experience to that person? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. With the size that we're at, that has actually been a little bit of a drawing and a talking point for us, because of the fact that we are so small that, and I say so small, we're mid-sized taps. And so, we're not the smallest at all. However, we make it a point for the adults in the school to be the ones that make the decision and make the schedule, so that these kids have that opportunity to compete in multiple things and do the things that they love to do outside of school. And luckily, we've had several success stories in that in speaking to a parent who I'll use soccer because this actually is just, this kid happened to also play soccer as well. She graduated several years ago and she played for one of the top ECNL soccer teams in DFW. She played for FC Dallas and she went on and she's playing at a D1 school now and she was still able to play school ball soccer for us. And more importantly, she was actually literally the fastest girl on my track team. And in the spring is when they have all those showcases. And it was one of those things where we're small enough to where we have those relationships with the families and the kids for me to sit down. We sat down, we looked at her soccer schedule. She had the showcases that were really important for her to get seen and to be scouted by college coaches. And it was pretty simple because for those, because I knew that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to go play soccer in college. And so, being supportive of that, I didn't register her in those track meets that had conflicts. But then at the same time, she was also willing to work around with us too to be able to be at those track meets that she had to be at. She was at the district track meet, she was at regional, she was at state, and she worked it out with her club soccer coach that she would be there. When she had soccer practices late at night, she'd start her track practice early. She'd get her reps done. We'd cut her workout short because I knew she was going to be leaving to go to a soccer practice. And so then you have the result of a kid who is playing Division 1 soccer right now, but was also a state champion in the 400 meters and a state champion on the 4x1 relay team. And so she went to state all 4 years of her high school career, whether it be on a relay or an individual event. But because of our size, and the relationships that we build with these families being K through 12, I can sit down and have that conversation with them and let them know, hey, we're willing to work with you. It has to be a partnership. But this is what we've done in the past, and this is what's worked in the past, and we have examples to show them.
Yeah, and that's such a key is having those conversations with the athlete, with the parent, getting the coaches on board. I would tell our student athletes, if you want to do, two sports during the season or you want a club or whatever, we're all in favor of that, but it's going to be a partnership. It's not just going to be, oh, here's a list of events, softball games, whatever it was that I can come to.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
so great, great stuff. Let's do this early. We're also going to do it at the end of the podcast. Jhoana, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more, or simply add you to their network, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
So my email, I'll give you two email addresses, my personal email and my work email. My work email is Mosley. It's JCAYME dash MOSLEY at lakehillprep.org. And then my personal email address is jcayme at gmail, JCAYME@gmail.com.
Okay. And again, we'll give that out at the end of the podcast. Jhoana Cayme-Mosely is our guest today. We're going to take a break, but we're coming back with more. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their scoreboards in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made as an athletic director was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Of course, we use it for home games, but we also used it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. Their products are tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule out live web demo today. We also want to thank Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's from Ohio University, but my assistant athletic director did, along with hundreds of others, and it was a great experience. It's very affordable, just 20 months, totally online. And while you're earning your master's degree, you're also completing 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. To get started, just go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Online Masters. And we want to say thanks to our good friends at Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches All of our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided. Our student athletes loved the videos, and our parents loved the streaming, but there is so much more. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and find out how to turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com.
Yeah, listening to those ads, Jake, we also have a sideline interactive scoreboard, score table, and they've been great to work with. Any issues that we've had, you talked about their customer service, they've really been on top of it and willing and able to help us through some of the troubleshooting that we've had to do, which isn't a lot at all. We've had them for several years now, and they've been great to work with, and the software that it comes with is tremendous. The laptop and everything that they preload on there for you is great as well. And we're a huddle school, and that's kind of one of the things that our kids look forward to after every game is getting that highlight, the game highlights that they put together after you send it off to Huddle Assist for the stats and everything. It's actually helped us help kids get recruited in kind of piling together clips and videos from games because of Huddle. So it's been a great tool.
Well, again, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm definitely going to share that with each of those companies. For Sideline, I'm right there with you on the customer service. I remember, I think we'd had it for a week or so, and everybody loved it. Kids were hanging around. They loved the videos. And for listeners, the preloaded information graphics effects that are part of your sideline interactive indoor score table, there is way more than you will ever be able to use. Okay.
Yep.
That's how complete it is. But we
Yep.
had already put in our rosters, pictures, things like that, normal stuff. And for some reason, the JV game, it's at halftime. I'm getting all the graphics hooked up for the varsity game, and it's not working. What's wrong? And I call the customer service line. The person actually answers, and in 5 minutes, the problem was fixed. And of course, it was something I had not done. I had not hooked this one wire up or something.
Mhm.
But that's how it was. When we called them, they were always there. And I mentioned in our little shout out, we used it for as the table for our signing ceremonies. We would create a PowerPoint that would run on the score table. The parents would send me pictures of the kids when they were, little kid basketball or little guy football, pictures of when they were at their college signing. Uh, and it was something I could give to the parents when we were done. It was just on a flash drive, but there would be, moms and dads in the stands crying as they watched this play out on the score table. And of course, Huddle, you talked about the recruiting, which certainly is a huge feature. I just had an AD on the other day, and he talked about something that I felt was just as important. The video library allows the 94% of the kids who are not going on to college to still have that highlight video and a keepsake that they can have to show their kids or brag about to their friends later on. So thanks so much for sharing how you use Sideline Interactive and Huddle.
Absolutely.
All right, let's continue with our discussion with Joanne Cayme-Mosely. She is still a head coach of a very successful program and an athletic director for her school. Joanne, here's a question: how do you balance, devoting time to your team as a head coach and devoting time to the other sports? Because I'm sure you've got that great parent, very supportive parent, who's saying under their breath, "Oh, she just supports the volleyball team. She doesn't care about the other sports."
Yeah.
Usually you hear that about football, but
Yeah.
I'm sure it gets mentioned. What do you do to make sure that that might be that one person's perception, but it is certainly not the reality?
Yeah. I try to be present at so many different things. Um, I think having a great coaching staff for my volleyball, it kind of ages me a little bit, but I'm not ashamed to say that both of my assistants for the volleyball team this year are alum of the school that actually played for me. And so being able to have them on staff has been such a treat this year. And I know that I can step away from practice if I need to handle something on the admin side and know that, things are being taught and things are being coached in the same way that I would because I was, I was their coach. And so that really, really helps is having that staff support for my volleyball team or from my volleyball program that I can kind of step away and be involved in other ways. Um, we live stream everything. And so even if I am not physically present at games, I am always watching on the live stream. And so I was actually, we double booked and we had basketball games going on, but also soccer games going on the same night. And I kind of did a 2-for-1 situation. I watched one half. I started at one at our soccer field and then moved over to basketball and watched the end of one game, the beginning of another, and then went back to soccer. But where I was physically not able to be at, I was on my phone and I was watching that live stream. And so the next day, I'm talking to the kids. It's like, I saw your first goal. I wasn't there for the third and fourth goal, but I was watching it on the live stream. Or, I see a kid that's hesitating and taking his shot, and I saw him in the hallway. It's like, you got to take your shot when you're open. I counted like 4 times that you hesitated and taking your shot. You got to take your shot, man. And so just kind of knowing and talking to the kids and having the communication with them, um, that even though I'm not physically there, that I'm watching. I watch every single game that we have, even if I can't be present. And then also, I'm talking to the kids before and after the games when I am present and talking to the families that are there. And so I'm just I try to be present in that way and communicate with them so that they know that I care. Even if they physically do not see me there, they know that I'm watching their games and supporting them in that way.
You know, as you go through your day, you're teaching little kids in kindergarten, you're active in the hallway. What are some ways that you use to, beyond what you just said, which is fantastic, to connect with kids so you don't end up, being caught just sitting in your office all day behind the desk?
Oh, I have to get out. I make it a point to be outside a lot, actually. We have a lot, every single morning, as a matter of fact, I'm out there in the mornings greeting kids outside by the flagpoles. So as they're coming in, I'm saying good morning, I'm saying hi, and I'm there with them during kind of passing periods. And because I feel like if I am caught up in my office, like you just get bogged down and there's always something. And so I try to get out when the kids have those passing periods or those open periods where they have a chunk of time. They have about a 15, a 30-minute chunk of time where they can meet with teachers or they could be outside and it's just a little bit of a open time for them. I try to be there as well. I pop in at lunch. I had lunch in the cafeteria with the seventh and eighth grade today, as a matter of fact, before the podcast. And so I try to be around and to just kind of show my face and just I make time to interact and be around because this world. I could stay in my office and work a very full day and always have something to do, but yeah, that's not why we're in it, right? We're in it for the kids and we're in it to be around them and support them. So I try to get out to those open periods where they can see me.
No, absolutely. Being present, being seen, it's just so important. For our listeners, Joanna and I first connected when she was one of the contributors to our Thursday series, Small School Athletic Director. That series is now a book available on Amazon. Uh, Joanna, a lot of our listeners are at smaller schools and might not have all of the resources that are available to, let's say, a bigger school AD. You did this for the small school series, but can you do it again? What are some things that you have found to be helpful for you in that small school setting?
I think that one of the things because we have the time and our staff, my staff is not as big as big school athletic directors. I have weekly standing meetings with coaches that are in season. The head coaches that are in season come and meet with me weekly. And some of the first things that we talk about are things that are not related to their sport at all. It's just me getting an update, how their kids, how's the family, how's everything going, how can I support you essentially? And so I have those weekly standing meetings with our head coaches. And I've also kind of implemented gatherings and kind of team building things with my coaching staff. I think when we did our podcast last May, we were in the middle of doing our end of year um, thing where we were getting the weight room ready and we were getting everything ready for summer workouts to start. And so we had coaches and we were getting the weight room set up, and then we grilled out, had a lunch, and had our end of season meeting. This year, I followed that up in August. We had an outing at Top Golf. And so I had the coaches come out to Top Golf, and we played for a couple hours and just kind of sit around, and the new coaches got to meet the returning coaches, and it was just a very laid back way of kind of getting to know everyone else on staff. Um, I send out weekly communication also where I give a shout out to a coach, whether it's something that happened with their team or a season that just wrapped up or something personal, a personal accomplishment. I pick a coach to kind of give them, prop them up a little bit and give them credit where credit is due. And so I send that out to all the coaches on a weekly basis, and that's what's included in there is a coach shout out. So I want them all to just kind of feel seen and know that I work under the full transparency. Like everything that I do, I want them to be a part of that and be a part of the team. And actually, those pictures you see back here, that's a picture of pretty much all of our team sports. And I chose the pictures for the teams that I coach, obviously, but I reached out to the coaches of those teams and I said, find your favorite picture from your program that has a story behind it or is your absolute favorite. And so they sent me those pictures and I blew them up to that 11 by 14 size that's back there because I want them to come in here and like know like to just have some type of connection to that because it's not my team. And so I want to showcase something that is meaningful for them because it's their program. So just little things like that.
Yeah. Again, those of you that are listening to the podcast, if you would like to see those photos that Joanna's talking about, just shoot me an email. I just took a screenshot of it. It's a great shot of her office with the photos up on the wall. What a great idea. Everybody comes into your office, they're going to see that. It's not just volleyball stuff, it's
Yeah.
the athletic program. Let's go and take another quick break. I know that's shocking to our regular listeners, but we are coming back with more. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Home Campus for their support of the podcast. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day, whether it's scheduling, rosters, results, communication. Their student athlete eligibility and clearance platform alone is worth the price. For more information or to get signed up, just go to homecampus.com. That's it, homecampus.com. Don't forget to mention the podcast. We also want to thank our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record board for all the teams, for all the different events, or a cool way to show off your school's Hall of Fame, go to Vital Signs Wall of Fame and take a look at their interactive touch screen. That's right, touch screen video consoles. It's also a great way to share your school's unique history and brag about your proudest moments. The website is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today. And we want to say thank you to Gipper. Your students are on social media, and if they're not seeing content that celebrates their accomplishments and promotes your program, you're missing out on a great opportunity. Go to Gipper.com. It's used and trusted by over 20,000 high school and college programs. It's professional graphic design made easy. Whether it's a social media post celebrating a big victory or a newsletter that's sharing all the great things your program is doing, the Gipper team is going to have you creating world-class content in seconds. Go to Gipper.com. Once again, mention the podcast, Gipper.com. It's social media made easy. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Joanna, this past Saturday, we had some occurrences around college football, and it seems it's the talk of the our profession nowadays. I'm curious about your take. If you're a listener and you don't know what I'm talking about, there were a couple of instances, and this was Division One football, where the winning football team at the end of the game they chose to plant a flag on the logo of the home team's stadium after the home team had been beaten. And some members of the home team took exception to that. So rather than talk about, wow, what a great football game, people are talking about the melee that occurred. So, Joanna, what's your policy on flag planting, on sportsmanship, on, you know, post-game fights? What would you like to talk about?
I saw all that, and I feel like the Michigan and Ohio State, with that one being an earlier game, it seemed like it opened up Pandora's box and led to all the other ones. Um, I have it's in our mission and our philosophy, our athletic philosophy, that one of the biggest things that we focus on is winning and losing with dignity, but always competing with class and representing our school in a way that's respectable. And, I keep thinking, going back to that, it's like, well, what would you have done? One, when I'm looking over our schedule and I am kind of picking and choosing the games that I'm the admin on duty, because I do have two coordinators that help me, because it's impossible for me to be at everything. And so we take turns being the admin on duty at a lot of things, but I will go through that schedule first. And I make sure that I put my name down a lot on that so that it's not all on them. And also, I go through there and I put my name down on those games where I know that there's maybe a slight possibility that something could happen. Whether it's a rivalry, whether it's a school that, may have a reputation, a negative reputation and that type of stuff. I make sure that I am present for those games and that I am there. But then also, knowing that their athletic director and I have had communication prior to the game, and that I know if their AD is there or not. And so I think that's a really, really big and important thing, as an AD, is to build that community, not within your own school, but outside of your school with other athletic directors, and knowing who is in charge at schools, which admin is on duty, and really just kind of forming those relationships, because we have had some really heated rivalries in all of our team sports, it seems like, whether it's volleyball. I mean, we're not planting flags on football fields, but in every team sport, in the years that I can remember, we've always had a rival. There hasn't been one year where we did not have a rival. However, I can go back and pretty much look through all those teams, and the kids are always surprised when I'm pretty good friends with that athletic director of that school. And so having that community and having those relationships with other athletic directors, it makes these conflicts, if they do come up, it makes it a lot easier to work through and to solve, because you have that relationship and you have that foundation with them, and it's just kind of based on mutual respect. And so it makes it a lot easier to work through any conflicts that may come up during games, because we know that we have a respect for each other, and that we've worked with each other long enough that we can work through it. So
And you bring up such a great point. Actually, you brought up several about it's in your policy, it's in your handbook. This is how we roll with regards to, sportsmanship, et cetera. But also having those pre-existing relationships with other athletic directors, with other coaches, particularly the ones of the schools you're going to play at. And for new ADs or younger ADs, um, it's really on you to kind of reach out. And if that connection doesn't exist, just introduce yourself so that you're not a stranger. You're not perceived as an adversary. You're a colleague. You just happen to be at a different school. Um, Joanna, in your time as as a leader, as a head coach, and now as the athletic director at Lake Hill, um, have you had occasion where maybe a new coach came in and, wasn't, let's say, initially totally on board with that philosophy, or maybe a kid. Kids are kids; they're going to do dumb things. So will
Yeah.
coaches sometimes. But a kid had a misstep with regards to sportsmanship. How did you handle that particular situation at your school?
So we actually have, and I don't know how other states work it, but our organization taps if a kid is thrown out of a game, whether it be really if there's any sport where a kid is ejected or thrown out of a game, they have to serve a suspension and a fine. And so, one of those things that we have conversations about is I am very upfront with in parent meetings and with student athlete meetings that these fines and what these consequences are if they get thrown out of the games. There have been times where I have gone onto a bus before they left, and no, there weren't any kids that were getting ejected or red carded, but we had come really really close with several yellow cards in soccer, I believe, 1 year. And I had to step onto a bus because I knew the game that they were going to was going to get pretty heated, and I had to step on the bus and like tell the kids that I mean there would be no yellow cards, or that we would not be stooping to any levels, or we were going to take control of our emotions and be able to control ourselves a lot better than what we have been doing. And that there were, I just had to kind of put the foot down and say it doesn't matter if it's not a red card. Yes, red card, you're going to be suspended and you're going to be ejected and you're going to do all that. You're going to serve the tap suspension. However, I am saying if there are any yellow cards, I will suspend you for a game. And so it's just, that's kind of one of those things where I'm getting yellow cards, but I'm not pushing it to the point where I get a red card so I won't be suspended. And so the yellow cards were piling on and the red cards weren't really coming out, but I had to just kind of nip that in the bud pretty quickly because that became the trend almost. Well, I'm not getting a red card, but I'm getting a yellow card. So I'm gonna push it just enough to not get thrown out of the game. And so I had to kind of implement a yellow card will get you suspended within our own school community because that's not behaving any better.
Yeah, and again, that's a great proactive step. It was communicated to the kids, communicated to the coaches. We did something similar at my school, and we really didn't have a problem, but we really, in talking with the coaches, we wanted to emphasize how important sportsmanship was. And to make a long story short, I presented this idea to the coaches. The coaches were fine with it. We presented it to our student leaders. They were fine with it. And we said, okay, we're moving forward. And of course, I got approval from my head of school.
Yeah.
We said that if a student, athlete, or coach got ejected at an athletic event, typically in our state in Florida, it was an automatic 2 games. You're gone for 2 games, depending on the severity. We told our students and our coaches that if you get ejected, we are going to double that. So if you're suspended for 2 games, we're adding 2 more to that. And it only came up in the 4 years that while I was still the AD before I retired, and we had that, it only came up twice. One was a girl basketball player, just total shock when the coach called me up, hey, so and so got ejected tonight. And I go, what? I guess a girl had grabbed her back of her hair. It had been a physical game, and she just turned around and swung on her. The next day, she's in my office with the coach, and she's in tears. She totally owned it. I'm so sorry. She knew about our policy. She was one of our leaders. She just 100% owned that. And I told her, I said, hey, I appreciate it. We're not going to double the suspension. Our hands are tied from the state. You're going with 2 games. The other one was in another sport. You can guess what it was. And the kid was just a knucklehead, didn't own it. The parents wanted me to appeal it. And I'm just going, here's the video. Look at this. We didn't appeal it, and we kept it double. But again, it was, I think our coaches and our kids did a great job of following through on that.
Mhm.
Well, thanks again for sharing with us. This has just been great. But We're not done yet. We always wrap up with the athletic director toolbox. Now, you certainly know your way around the world of athletics, but we're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor the AD Toolbox. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 items in the toolbox. So let's take that break. And when we come back, we're going to find out what Jhoana Cayme-Mosely puts into her new athletic director toolbox. We'd like to thank Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment. You know, athletic directors already get feedback, but a lot of times it's from a very small group that only wants to complain. Athletic Surveys is going to connect you to that group so you can hear their concerns and hopefully address them. But they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And having that data is very important, especially when you're visiting with that frustrated parent or student athlete, or maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting today with Jhoana Cayme-Mosely, the director of athletics at Lakehill Prep School in Dallas, Texas. Has a tremendous background in athletics, but right now I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let her put 3 items in the toolbox. So, Jhoana, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
All right, one thing I learned really, really quickly is flexibility. One, there is always something, and whether it's something big or something little, being flexible enough to kind of roll with it and make changes on the fly, make decisions on the fly. And it can be anything and everything. But there's a Swedish, and Jake, I love quotes. So there's a Swedish proverb that says, rough waters are a truer test of leadership. In calm water, every ship has a good captain. So flexibility to manage whatever comes your way, because it'll be anything and everything, depending on what season it is. So that's a big one for me, is flexibility. Um, the next one would be a servant leadership mindset. And I said this in our other podcasts. We have to calm more fires than we create. So no one knows your number or your email until something goes wrong. And so you have to understand that in this line of work, you have to lead from a servant leadership mindset and know that the credit and everything goes to the kids and the coaches when everything goes right. It's just our job to make sure everything goes right. So very much a servant leadership mindset when going into this profession. And then the last one, I've learned this in the past couple of years, is just the ability to give yourself some grace and time to find your happy place. I've learned you can't pour from an empty bucket. That's one. That kind of goes along with this, and that, sometimes you're going to make a decision where 50% of your clientele disagree with it and 50% agree with it. And sometimes 50-50 is actually still a win. So giving yourself some grace in that sense, that you are not going to make a decision that pleases 100% of who you serve or who you're dealing with. And so sometimes you got to kind of take a step back, give yourself some grace, and realize that, heck, sometimes even 40-60 may be a win. But you gotta be able to step back and give yourself some grace in that, and then you got to be able to find your happy place.
Oh, well, you probably saw me writing all those down. I love every single one of them. Particularly the one. Well, your quotes are great, but that idea of being flexible enough and saying, "Well, do I really need to dig in on this situation?" Servant
Yeah,
leadership, of course, and finding that balance, finding that happy place, and grace. As an official, every call you make, you're going to make half the gym happy and piss off the other half. So,
exactly.
yeah, absolutely. Joanne, thanks so much for spending some time with us. Just a great episode. One more time, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain a little bit, or simply add you to their AD network, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Absolutely. My work email is jcamey-mosley at lakehillprep.org. That's JCAYME-MOSLEY at lakehillprep.org. And my personal email is jcamey at gmail, JCAYME@gmail.com.
Well, Joanna, thanks again for sharing. All the best as we wrap up the, let's say, the fall semester. Winter season's already getting going.
Yep.
And hopefully, we're going to be able to connect. I know you mentioned you're not going to be able to make it to Austin this year, but you got to get down to Florida next year when Florida hosts the NIAAA conference.
That sounds like a much more awesome place to be at. I've been to Austin a million times, so I'll try to make it to Florida out there to meet you.
All right, we're going to hold you to that. Um, for our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully, we're going to see you in Austin. And just a reminder, we upload the Zoom recordings of all of our interviews to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day. We share stories and best practices. So come back and join us again on the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast.